Welcome to the show, and congrats to William Byron, who's reached the lofty heights of winning the Daytona 500 back-to-back. Only 5 drivers in the history of NASCAR have been able to pull off that trick. Hi, I'm Doug Rice, joined by Brad Gillie as we're breaking down the 67th running of the Daytona 500, where William Byron flashes some strength at the end of the race and comes on and takes his second 500. And Brad, it's all about surviving and being there on the last lap, it feels like.
Pretty much. I mean, look, William Byron was running ninth, and when the seas parted, he was there. And you know, you go back and you look at the last lap coming to the checkered flag, and you see how he went around the top and was able to avoid the wreck. Go back to the wreck prior to that as well, the one that set up the overtime finish, and you can see where he skated through that. One of the bigger stats from the weekend for me, Doug, was the fact that 45 cars entered the Daytona 500. 45 total, only 41 started, and there were just 4 cars out of the 45 that went through the entire speed week without having an incident at all. One of those 4 was William Byron. So to your point, you got to be there at the end. You've got to be in a position to win. But think about that. One of only 4 cars to go completely unscathed during the entirety of speed week.
And there's no glory in leading laps in the Daytona 500. Let's take a look at this stat here. The lap leaders were Ryan Blaney, ran up front a lot, led 23 laps. Right behind him, Austin Cindric led a whopping 59 laps. Didn't do him any good. Bubba Wallace was around the front a good bit, especially the first half of the race. He faded back later on. He led 18 laps, and Joey Logano led 43 laps. And Brad, none of them finished inside the top 5. It's all about telling you the last 1 or 2 laps, and usually a restart lap.
Yeah, and somehow Ryan Blaney still managed to finish inside the top 10 after having heavy damage on his car. But you're right, and let's look at where a lot of these wrecks started. You know, some of the bigger wrecks actually started right there at the front of the field. You know, the last 2 wrecks, I mean, you know, pretty big wrecks right there at the front of the field. Well, maybe not the last 2. You have to go back to the one that was involving Joey Logano, and then obviously that last wreck with Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe trying to, you know, shove his car into a spot that maybe it wasn't going to fit. And to your point, the running up front is not a big reward. It's great to go out there and control the race. Team Penske did it through the bulk of it. As you mentioned, the top 3 lap leaders, all Team Penske drivers. But in the end, William Byron just was in a position, and I'll call it a fortunate position, as well as, you know, well, let's just call it a fortunate position. Look, he knew what he was doing, but still, you have to get lucky to avoid that.
At no point during this race, even though he did lead 10 laps, did I feel like, yeah, there's the guy that's going to win this. He's going to be up front. It almost felt 2/3 of the way through that it was inevitable that Joey Logano or Ryan Blaney was going to win it. I clearly felt like, or maybe even their teammate Austin Cindric, I clearly felt like that the Penske Fords were the class of the field.
I agree. And you look at it and say, hey, look, all things being equal, sure, we might have seen all 3 of them battle for the win. We've seen it before. We saw it when Austin Cindric actually won his Daytona 500, and he did it by moving teammate Ryan Blaney out of the way. But everything's not equal, and I think this is why we love these races so much. For me personally, look, I get it. The carnage is part of it. I get it that a lot of people feel unfulfilled that they weren't able to be side by side at the checkered flag. Instead, they were wrecking coming into turn 3. But isn't this why we watch? It's the unpredictability. And when you talk about unpredictability in sports, I don't know that there is anything at a higher level than what we see at Daytona, Talladega, and Atlanta.
So, Brad, let's discuss the fact that at the end of this race, it was William Byron who was running 9th. And then there's all this crashing going on, and he able to artfully dodge it and come on and win the race. But you get to that point in these races that you almost feel there's an inevitability that that's going to happen, or at least I did. I would have been shocked if they had erased the overtime without another crash.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think you look at really how cars are running there, and you look at it wasn't like there were 4 Gibbs teammates, for example, running up front. You know, you had Denny Hamlin as part of that front draft. You had Chase Briscoe trying to insert himself into there, right next to Cole Custer, and that just simply wasn't going to work. There wasn't enough room to be able to do that. Briscoe was able to get through, but Denny Hamlin, for example, one of the drivers racing for a win, trying to pick up his 4th, was not able to do that. I almost feel, Doug, that if you had 4 Hendrick Chevys or 4 Gibbs Toyotas or, 3 Penske Fords up there, then we might have seen something that came down to more of a race to the checkered flag, similar to what we had last year at Atlanta, although that was 3 different drivers from 3 different teams. But I feel that would have shaken out that way. But because we had so many different teams and it wasn't like there were a bunch of teammates out there, trying to battle side by side, I think that's what really lent itself to the gotta go get them kind of situation, although there were 2 Gibbs teammates, or really one with Chase Briscoe getting in there, that ultimately took out another Gibbs teammate in Denny Hamlin.
Going back in time over the Daytona week, when we had the duels race, it looked like that Eric Jones had won one of the qualifying races, and then they realized, no, the caution flag came out, or the caution light, rather, came on a nanosecond before he got to the start-finish line, and Austin Cindric got the win. There was a lot of consternation about that. In the Daytona 500, Brad, they're crashing big time on the last lap. NASCAR kept the flag in the pocket and let them finish under green. Was part of that a make good, or is part of this maybe it's a new philosophy? If they're not wrecking right on the front, we're gonna hold this and let them finish.
I would hope there is no such thing as a make good when it comes to calls in any sport. And I look at it this way, and I'm not making an excuse for NASCAR. There needs to just simply be consistency, period. But I get that in the duels you look at it and say, oh my gosh, all these cars are wrecking. We better back everyone down and throw the caution. I don't think that would have mattered in the duels. But if they're trying to save equipment, if you will. I also get that it's the Daytona 500 and you want the race to end under green. And if they're wrecking in turn 3, that's another 2 miles around the racetrack that cars are going to be able to get woed up after they race to the checkered flag. So I understand them saying we're going to try and end the Daytona 500 under green. It wasn't necessary, though. There was no race to the checkered flag. Tyler Reddick was not going to catch William Byron, so they need to find that consistency somewhere. And if you're having a wreck that close to the checkered flag and you can let it play out, please let it play out. But the fact that it didn't play out the same way in the duels, but it did in the Daytona 500, that lends itself to criticism.
I did applaud the move to let him go green. It felt like a long time. As much as I didn't like the call in the duels that cost Eric Jones the win, and I don't care whether it was Eric Jones or anybody else, as many times as we can, Brad, I'm a fan of seeing the race end under the green, a race back to the line, not a race at 45 miles an hour behind a caution car.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And look, if you can let it go green, and this was a situation where if they did or didn't, no matter what, they were going to get criticized. But they were getting criticized because they didn't on Thursday night, but they did on Sunday night. And that's real easy to point fingers if you're not the one in the tower to go, well, why did you do it this way but not that way, and so on and so forth. I'm going to be happy that they let the Daytona 500 end under green, and we'll go with that. Now, I'm going to be happier if we see the same consistency all throughout the year as well.
Does it come into play as much at other tracks as it does Daytona, Talladega, maybe Atlanta? Mm-hmm. Other places, the finishes are usually a little bit more predictable. Obviously, the Daytona 500 is a big deal in the sports world and in the NASCAR calendar. That is, unless you watch ESPN Sports Center. But it's a big deal anywhere when the president shows up.
And Mr. President, the radio is yours. This is your favorite president. I'm a big fan. I am a really big fan of you people that you do this. I don't know, but I just want you to be safe. You're talented people, and you're great people and great Americans. Have a good day. Have a lot of fun, and I'll see you later.
Donald J. Trump, 47th President of the United States, making an appearance. And, Brad, I don't care where you sit on who is the president. Seeing Air Force One fly over your event, that's pretty cool.
Oh, my gosh. Watching the way that they circled Daytona was awesome because the anticipation of it. Seeing the Beast, the presidential limo, pace the field for the Daytona 500, I mean, that was kind of chilling. That was an amazing moment to see that. And to your point, in a completely apolitical way, it's the President of the United States. And for the President of the United States to show up at the Daytona 500 and to be a part of it in that way, that was just such an amazing American moment. I loved it.
And the setting for Daytona is unlike any place else because they literally can almost land Air Force One on the backstretch. The Daytona airport runs parallel to the backstretch. You see planes take off there all the time. but you get Air Force One coming in like that and all of the symbolism that evokes. It kind of flashes back to when Richard Petty won his 200th race down there. That was a summer race, but he won that Firecracker 400 and Reagan's landing on the backstretch. So there are a lot of tie-ins, as I thought Fox did a nice job yesterday of showing between the running of the Daytona 500 and American presidents.
Yeah, I agree. And really some great imagery, some great moments. I think Jamie Little once again did a great job of interviewing Donald Trump. It was really sweet to see his granddaughter down there in her little white dress with the rainbow on the front, and just make it a family event as well. And look, that was a great way to kick things off in what really turned out to be a fantastic season opener.
Jamie Little had maybe the best week on the planet. She got to work the Westminster Dog Show that was won by a giant schnauzer named Monty, and then she interviews the president. Way to go, Jamie.
I didn't realize the first part.
I want to grow up and be Jamie Little. Yes, a giant schnauzer won the Westminster Dog Show, maybe the highlight of the week. We got to take a break. Lee Spencer was in Daytona. She was able a little bit earlier today to catch up and interview William Byron. We'll hear from him next.
From fueling NASCAR champions on the track for over 20 years to innovating 94 octane, the highest octane on the market. Performance is what Sunoco does. All Sunoco fuel at the pump meets the same top-tier standards as the fuel used in NASCAR. From the track to your tank, you can trust Sunoco to help your vehicle perform at its peak.
Hi, this is PRN's Brett McMillan. You don't spend your life just sitting around, so what you need is PRN's mobile app. By downloading the mobile app, you can listen to our live race broadcast from anywhere. Make sure you don't miss a second of the action from the track. If you download it today, you get station listings and on-demand access to your favorite studio shows like Fast Talk, Pit Reporters, or Garage Pass. Get all the latest racing information at your fingertips with the PRN mobile app. Download today. Available at the Apple App Store and on Google Play.
I'm Martin Truex Jr., and you're listening to Fast Talk on the Performance Racing Network.
It's hard to believe in this day and age in the United States of America that children are hungry.
Our time on this planet is short. We have to give back to those in need.
Every child has a chance, no matter what obstacles they may encounter.
Never have we been taxed more as a society to help kids the way we are right now.
Speedway Children's Charities raises money through several different avenues. My favorite is the Gala.
It's one of those can't-miss events for everybody who attends, and I've been able to raise and distribute over $60 million.
When you have 50 different organizations receiving grants from Speedway Children's Charities, that's far-reaching. And some people think, well, I don't have much money to give. I say $50 is a lot to give.
At Speedway Children's Charities,
our mission is simple. Help every child we can.
Because all children
deserve joy
And hope.
And love. And if one child is still in need,
Then there's still work to do.
Fast Talk is brought to you in part by Sunoco. From NASCAR to your car, Sunoco Fuel helps your car reach peak performance. I'm Doug Rice, joined by Brad Gillie. In a moment, we will hear from the winner of the Daytona 500, William Byron. Brad, I don't know that we stress enough that you win 2 Daytona 500s, especially when you do it back-to-back. That's pretty rarefied air. It's also his 14th career win.
Yeah, and a career win total that has spanned several different styles of racetracks. Last year alone, he won the Daytona 500, a speedway. He won Circuit of the Americas, a road course in Martinsville Speedway, a short track as well. And I know he wants to make sure that that team is very well-rounded in 2025. But my gosh, to think that you have your name not only twice on the Harley J. Earl Trophy, but side by side on that trophy is really cool. And just 2 days ago, they were actually getting the car from last year out of Daytona, USA, where it sat for a year. Today, they're putting a new one in.
Yep. They don't get to keep this one very long either. And when you get it back, it's exactly like it is when it left the track. It still has the confetti on it, all the dirt and everything. They stick it in Daytona, USA for a year, and then you get the car back. So kind of kind of weird. You win the race, they take your car away. They also have a very special ceremony at Daytona, unlike every other racetrack on the NASCAR circuit, where they have a breakfast the day after the race. Fortunately, that breakfast was on Monday this year, not Tuesday, and they celebrated and recognized the Daytona 500 winners. Lee Spencer was hanging out at that breakfast today, and she got to spend some quality time with race winner William Byron.
William Byron, two-time Daytona 500 champion. How does that feel?
It feels amazing. It honestly took a while to set in. I think still it'll take time to set in, like getting back, home and experiencing it. But yeah, pretty amazing night, really, and just the way everything unfolded, and then being in Victory Lane, it was honestly surreal.
Last year, the 24 team didn't have the opportunity to celebrate the win.
Yeah.
Did you make up for lost time?
Yeah, we did. We did for sure. Like last year, I kind of bolted from the track and went on the media tour. And this year, because it was a Monday race last year, so this year we got a chance to enjoy it and got to celebrate by the hauler. Actually went on the front stretch and kind of celebrated. That was really awesome.
Just to have the whole crew around you, because together, since Rudy came back, or I would say rejoined you as a crew chief, you've built such a strong nucleus at the 24 team, and it's almost like a band of brothers. Mm-hmm. What does that feel like to have the support of all those guys around you?
Yeah, it's that's honestly who you go to battle with, and that's who, at this level, that's who you get your confidence from and trust. And so to have that group around me that is confident and has the ability they do to work through adversity and continue to strive for more is just that's all you can ask for. I really have confidence in my team, and at the same time, we have a lot of goals this year that we want to check off, and I think we're a really experienced group, and a lot left to go after.
Even though you won this race last year, there were still a lot of surprised people on your team because the chaos that broke out at the end.
Yeah.
It's amazing that it's nothing, it's not a testament to what you've accomplished, but just that surprise factor there at the end. How long does that take to set in?
Yeah, it honestly, yeah, it took a while to process the win last night, because I felt like, I didn't really understand all that happened on the last lap. Like you just try to go in the right place and make the right decision in that split second, and it ended up being the right decision. And I don't know if I've ever had kind of a gate open like that, like where I just shot through it and it worked. So it was just a really unique way to win a race, because I felt like it was just like seas parting or gates opening, however you want to put it. Like I went to a spot and it worked, and we're here. So it just it was pretty wild. Honestly, just like shock, really. That's, I think, what looking back at my interview and just seeing my expression, that's how I felt.
The emotions of having your mother there, your father there, your sister the first time.
Yeah.
How did that feel? Because you're a tight-knit family.
Yeah, we're a really tight-knit family, and I feel like my sister and I are closer than any of us, really. So she knows me better than anyone. Like she, to the point where it was really funny. Like she came by the bus before the race, and I was about to get ready for the race, and she could just tell the look on my eyes. She's like, she didn't have to say anything. She knew to not bother me in that moment, and it was just I thought that to myself. I'm like, man, she knows me better than anyone. So it was really cool to have her here, because that emotion was real from her, and just being able to experience that with her. It was the first time in a while I've seen her just be just that cool factor of what just happened.
It sounded like that last lap was almost instinctual to you. We talked about Jeff Gordon giving you a pep talk coming into the week. He said, William, you're a Daytona 500 winner now. Mm-hmm. Did that kind of give you confidence coming in that you know what you've accomplished? You're already at 14 wins, and you're starting your 8th season.
Yeah.
Some people don't get 14 wins in a career.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you were performing on a different level last night?
Yeah, I feel like I'm just I'm kind of open about it, but just the way that I grew up and the way that my career started, I had a kind of imposter syndrome of just really not feeling like I belonged in this sport, like I was an outsider. And I think that last year proved to me that I belong in this sport, and that's just kind of being surrounded by great people and being on a great team. That's really kind of making myself feel at home. So yeah, it's that confidence is coming, and I feel like for me, it's just now I can really get into the process of how to win, multiple races with my team and just work towards those goals. But yeah, for me, it's just I think that comfort and confidence comes from experience.
You grew up the baby. You're the baby of the bunch over at Hendrick Motorsports. You have two champions that you work with, Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson. Mm-hmm. Being a two-time champion, I mean, some people never get one Daytona 500. There are incredible careers, Rusty Wallace, Mark Martin, that it's still missing from their resume. Has William Byron finally earned the respect that he deserves after a second title?
Yeah, I mean, that's for other people to say, but for me, I know inside my heart, I feel, I feel respected, and I feel just a part of this sport, and I want to be for a long time. So for me, it's just working on my craft and trying to perfect that. And I'm more comfortable than I ever have been in the sport and around the garage, and I think that is real. That's real power. That's once you get involved in this sport, it can be very intimidating and can kind of knock you down in a lot of ways. So I think that I've really overcome that the last couple of years.
What was that first conversation like with Mr. H?
It was special. I mean, he's just excited. I think both of us were so excited we couldn't get the words out. But I thought about just the 10th win for Hendrick Motorsports in this race. That's huge. And he's won so many milestone races. It's hard to give him something new, but it felt really special to contribute.
I've talked to you and your dad about growing up and sneaking into racetracks. I mean, I won't say you're obsessed, but you were really a sports fan, a NASCAR fan. To carry on the legacy of the 24, to give Mr. Hendrick half of those 500 wins between you and Jeff. Well, how does that feel from the time, you're a kid growing up, you see Jeff Gordon, I mean, he's like the Michael Jordan of the sport. How does it feel to be in that role now?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of room to go to get to Jeff Gordon level, but I think that just this, our team is really building something, and to your point, I grew up just a fan of this sport, and honestly, for me, that's where my passion and interest in the sport came from, is just a genuine joy and excitement for watching racing. And I think that's what carries me every day. I try to remember, especially in the off season, remember the real reasons I do this, and it's for the love of racing.
Really appreciate your time today, William.
Yeah, thank you.
We work hard to keep our cars looking great on the outside, but engine components need our attention too. That's where you can trust Z-Max Micro Lubricant to disperse carbon buildup in your engine and fuel system, to keep your car or truck running at its peak. By soaking into the metal of your engine, Z-Max Micro Lubricant improves performance, extends engine life, and reduces emissions. Trust the many customers who've said, "Thanks for saving my engine." Find out more at zmax.com or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
Down south, there's a place where moments are made at 180 miles per hour, where the thrills give you chills that are second to none. And at every turn, anything can and will happen fast. Some say it's just a NASCAR race, but it's Fastlanta, America's destination for acceleration, home of full throttle throwdowns, partying into the night, and unbelievable photo finishes. NASCAR returns to Atlanta Motor Speedway for the Ambetter Health 400, February 21st through 23rd. Get tickets now at atlantamotorspeedway.com.
I'm Kevin Harvick, and you're listening to Fast Talk on the Performance Racing Network.
Hey race fans, we can't wait to see you right here at New Hampshire Motor Speedway for a wicked fast, wicked fun, fall-tastic weekend this September as we host New England's only NASCAR playoffs weekend with lots of fun activities, premium experiences, thrilling racing, and of course, one of the best NASCAR camping experiences around. Cup, trucks, mods, and it's locked in for this September. Keep an eye on NHMS.com, September 19th through the 21st, New England's big track.
Are you the next big star ready to rock Music City's NASCAR stage? Nashville Superspeedway is launching a search for one incredible local artist or band to headline the 2025 NASCAR Weekend Pre-Race Concert. The top 10 will face off in a fan vote with a final showdown on Broadway in front of celebrity judges. Join the ranks of Music City's best and submit your performance video at NashvilleSuperspeedway.com by March 6th for your chance to be Nashville's next rising star.
Got a few more minutes to talk about the Daytona 500. Got started late, but did not disappoint with a high level of excitement. Would be nice, Brad Gillie, to see one of these engines we talked about last week actually go off on time. It didn't start late. It just finished really late.
Yes, it did. And I'll say this. Look, I know the Daytona 500 and really Daytona has been plagued with weather for quite a few years now. But yesterday, looking at that line of storms that literally went from Canada all the way down to Mexico, it didn't matter if we were racing at Talladega, Charlotte, Daytona, Atlanta, Watkins Glen, Pocono, New Hampshire, Bristol, or any other track that would have been racing east of the Mississippi yesterday. Rain was going to be a factor. So this wasn't just a Daytona thing. This was literally an all across our country thing.
Just really happy when it was all said and done. They got it in on the actual day of and didn't have to be back there on a Monday racing. That's never good for anybody. Tyler Reddick finished second in his Toyota, the Nasty Beast Toyota. Another Toyota finished third, Brad, driven by two-time Daytona 500 winner and seven-time champion Jimmy Johnson. How about that? We didn't talk about Jimmy Johnson the entire race, and then suddenly the old man makes it through the melee and gets a third-place finish.
Yeah, and, let's go back on his speed week because he was the second fastest in single-car runs on the single-car portion of qualifying, and he locked himself into the Daytona 500. So he didn't really have to push it in the duels, and they kind of had some problems in the duels. He ended up, starting at the back of the Daytona 500, which was just fine because he didn't need to worry about wrecking his car or doing anything like that. And the way he ran the race, for the past 3 seasons, Jimmy Johnson has been getting in cars and not finishing races, any number of things going wrong. Heck, he didn't even make it a whole lap at Circuit of the Americas a couple of years ago before getting taken out coming to the final turn. And this one, finally, he actually gets to finish a race in his post-full-time career, and I think he did it in a pretty spectacular way, not only with his third-place finish, but all of Legacy Motor Club, John Hunter Nemechek finishing 5th, and Eric Jones finishing 12th. That was a great day for that organization.
Brad, is that fool's gold, or is that a harbinger that maybe, just maybe, Legacy Motor Club has made some gains during the offseason?
I would say both. Number one, wherever you finish at Daytona, I think a lot of times is fool's gold. That's just simply the way it is. And I don't look at anyone who finished in the top 10 or outside of the top 10 and say, boy, that's a good indicator of where they're going to be. But I also feel that Legacy Motor Club, where they are in their journey as a NASCAR Cup Series team, and, they come in, Jimmy Johnson's the majority owner. They added a lot of really talented people in the offseason, from Chad Johnston, who served as Johnson's crew chief for the Daytona 500, to a guy named Brian Campy, who's been around the sport a long, long time. I think you can look at what they've done to build their strength between 2024 and 2025 and say maybe that one is the harbinger of what's to come moving forward.
Well, for their sake, let's hope so. Anyway, nice day at the office. As you said, 3 cars in the top 12. Another story that people followed a great deal was the entry of Junior Motorsports' first ever Cup team out there competing in the Daytona 500 with Justin Allgaier at the wheel of the number 40 Travelers Whiskey Chevrolet. in part sponsored by Chris Stapleton. Big all-star lineup, a lot of attention around that. Junior very emotional that they made it to the show, and they snag a top 10 as he comes home ninth. Brad, I don't know that you could reasonably expect much better.
No, I don't know that you could. And I don't know that you could have expected worse either. The only thing that I was expecting was maybe some free samples of Traveler whiskey, and they weren't passing those out. But that's okay. Look, Justin Allgaier's a veteran of this sport, and this wasn't his first Daytona 500. Obviously, Junior Motorsports has a lot of talented people there and a lot of great help to prepare that race car. But there were so many uh-oh moments, and I think that's probably one of those things like, how nervous were they when they were the third fastest in the single-car run portion of qualifying? How nervous were they in the duels portion of qualifying when Justin Allgaier's like the third car in line of the ones of the non-chartered teams? But then how cool was it to see him pull a line on the outside on Thursday night and race his way into the Daytona 500? To me, the getting in was the, okay, we did it, we're here, that's great, we get to be a big part of it. The ninth place finish when it was all said and done, after Allgaier's car did just, he had a couple of bumps and bruises along the way. To me, that's just total icing on the cake, and what a great way to finish it out.
So congrats to Junior Motorsports and their probably one-off entry for this year. They come home with a top 10 finish, and all's well that ends well in that. Brad, there were two other great sentimental stories heading into this Daytona 500. One of them around Martin Truex Jr. coming back fresh out of retirement, didn't retire for very long, to race for Tricon Motorsports and to try to finally get a Daytona 500. And unfortunately, he winds up finishing 38th, only completing 70 laps.
Yeah. His day ended early, obviously. They brought a really fast car. He was the fastest of the non-charter teams, which was cool. And it was really cool to see him back with his championship-winning crew chief, Cole Pern, for this effort at Daytona. We know we're going to see Martin back at the track this year, whether it's any more Cup races or some Xfinity Series races. He says he's not done racing. He just doesn't want to do it every week. In fact, I think he spent the last month or two down in Florida and is probably going to stay down there doing some fishing and all of that. I thought it was great to see him back. Obviously, he was disappointed, as you can see in his early exit interview from this race. But you know what? If he wants to come down here and have some fun, that's great. Maybe he should pick another track, though, because it seemed like this is long-time disappointment at Daytona. And, come back at Dover or someplace, where
maybe a little more favorable.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of long-time disappointment at Daytona, it was the 20th attempt for Kyle Busch to win the Great American Race, and he comes up short. Brad, here's the fascinating part of this for me. Kyle Busch, for the vast majority of his career, was a driver that a lot of people elected to hate on for whatever reasons. Part of it was his own fault, his reaction to the public and his brashness. A lot of people didn't like that. Going into this race, it felt to me like the vast majority of NASCAR fans wanted to see Kyle Busch win the Daytona 500, get that proverbial monkey off his back, and do well. I think that part of the story, the transformation of fandom, is as fascinating as Kyle Busch actually trying to win the thing.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how, and this is one thing that's incredible about this sport, probably more so than any other out there, is that there is a lot of our fandom that despises success. When Jimmy Johnson's winning 5 consecutive championships, and the guy winning the most races at the time, people are like, I don't want to see you win. When Kyle Busch is doing the same thing, I don't want to see you win. Of course, Kyle Busch had a lot more attitude behind him in that. But as you go through time and all of a sudden you see struggles, you go through your first winless season ever in 2024, plus you're driving for a team owner that's pretty popular in this sport, in Richard Childress. Yeah, I agree with you. I like it. Here's the other thing I like. In Kyle Busch's Care Center interview, that Kyle Busch swagger was there because he was not pulling any punches in how he felt about how that wreck in front of him developed.
I did want to talk to you about the one accident, and it may be the same one, and that's the one with Stenhouse and Joey Logano. And at first, and I think I might have posted something about this, I fully felt like it was Ricky Stenhouse. He was a contributor. He's moving left to right. He's really erratic. But in looking at that crash again, Joey Logano is as much fault, I feel like, now as Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was.
Honestly, I feel almost like 80-20 the opposite way. I feel Stenhouse, Logano made a move. He had a clear opening in the middle, and Stenhouse threw a late block.
Yeah.
You can see Logano get off the gas. There are flames coming out of his exhaust. He was trying to back off. The problem is that he had a full field of cars behind him, with Noah Gragson being the one that was right there on his bumper. Joey at that point had nowhere to go. I think he was just trying to find an open spot. Like, I know I'm not going to fit in here now because Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is continuing to come down and block. He's the one who gave up the most speed in that, Stenhouse Jr. did. And, I can see where it looked like Logano was trying to kind of wedge his way in there, but I don't think he had a choice at that time. I don't think he could have backed up, and I don't think he could have moved forward. It's just, look, this is one of those where a couple of cars were trying to occupy the same space at the same time, but I think Stenhouse Jr.'s very late block is probably the bigger catalyst to that one.
That, and sometimes the past does serve as prologue. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has been involved in countless things like this. That man has tore up a lot of race cars. Yeah, he's won a handful of races, but more likely than not, it ends like it did at Daytona. So unfortunate, because that took a lot of good race cars out at the race, and maybe the best race car on the no, not maybe. It was the best. Joey Logano had the best race car.
I agree. I agree.
If all things stay equal, that car doesn't get torn up, I think he gets to the front, controls the race, and probably wins it. Hey, we're heading to Atlanta. It's become an action track. We'll talk about that next.
From fueling NASCAR champions on the track for over 20 years to innovating 94 octane, the highest octane on the market. Performance is what Sunoco does. All Sunoco fuel at the pump meets the same top-tier standards as the fuel used in NASCAR. From the track to your tank, you can trust Sunoco to help your vehicle perform at its peak.
Hi, it's PRN's Brad Gillie. Did you know you could take PRN with you anywhere? That's right. By downloading the PRN mobile app, you can listen to our live race broadcast from anywhere. Make sure you don't miss a second of the action from the track. Download today for station listings and on-demand access to your favorite studio shows like Fast Talk, The Pit Reporters, or Garage Pass. Get all the latest racing information at your fingertips with the PRN mobile app. Download today, available in the Apple App Store and on Google Play.
I'm Joey Logano, and you're listening to Fast Talk on the Performance Racing Network.
Hey, it's Charlie and Debbie, along with NASCAR legend Kyle Petty, inviting you to join us for Kyle Petty's Back Then Again Country Countdown.
Each week, we'll put it in reverse and take a trip down memory lane, looking back at that week's top 20 country songs from years past.
We'll dive into what made those songs and artists move the needle, what pop culture trends made those years unique.
And you'll get to hear me tell stories only I can tell.
So don't miss Kyle Petty's Back Then Again Country Countdown right here each week.
Hold on to your horses. The Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix returns to Circuit of the Americas February 28th through March 2nd. NASCAR stars face a new action-packed course in a high-octane showdown. Experience live music, fan zone attractions, and more. Plus, camp at the track for ultimate race weekend access. A new road, a new rodeo. The Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix. Tickets at NASCARDakota.com.
So often, a lot of us like to bash on television coverage, doesn't matter what it is. NFL, Major League Baseball, NASCAR. Brad, I want to give props to Fox for their rain delay coverage at Daytona. Yeah. I watched it, and we had a bunch of people over. We were going to have a watch party, and folks sat around and watched the interviews and were fascinated by it. I thought there was some really good behind-the-scenes content. That's not easy to do. And I felt like Fox did a great job for 2 hours there of filling time, but it didn't feel like filler. Didn't feel like filler.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I thought it was great. You know, their pit stage that they had out there and the desks that they had, that they just kept cycling drivers through there. And I mean, the cool part of this is these are drivers who had already run 10 laps in the race and, we're kind of sitting around waiting to finish the Daytona 500. I don't know that you see this in any other sport where athletes on game day so readily make themselves available. And whether it was some of the behind-the-scenes feature stories that they had prepared, to those live interviews, to everything that they did with the coverage, as you well know, that's not an easy thing to do. And I thought they knocked it out of the park. I thought that was fantastic.
No, they were treading water, but made the absolute best out of it. This coming weekend, NASCAR, along with the Performance Racing Network, heads to Atlanta Motor Speedway, the site of a 3-wide finish last year in this particular race. Let's flash back.
Big time push from Bubba Wallace to Kyle Busch. Wallace looks inside. Busch right up to Blaney's rear bumper. Crossover move. Kyle Busch up high. They're 3 wide for the lead. It's Daniel Suarez up high with Busch in the middle.
3 wide for the lead here in Atlanta. Coming back to the start-finish line. Blaney down on the inside.
If you would, take us through the last couple laps and how you won that race, what you were looking at, what all was going on in the race car.
We had a great car, just like Ryan and Kyle did as well. In those situations, it's everything about the support that you get from behind. And when I say the support that you get from behind, I'm not talking only the car directly behind you, but also the third row is very important. And nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about the third row that is pushing. I knew that I wanted to be on the outside, so I made an aggressive move on Martin Truex to get in front of him on the outside, and once that happened, I was exactly what I wanted to be. But the way things shuffle out, the 2 car from Austin Cindric ended up being behind me, and Kyle Busch was in the bottom with the 23 of Bubba Wallace behind him, and Blaney was blocking both lanes, and I knew I was going to be pretty good with the 2 car behind me. And I was getting, for 1 lap, I got a hell of a push, and then I was able to make a run on Blaney, and I almost make the pass. And then I said, okay, it didn't work out, let me try again. We still have a few laps to go. And then after that, the pushes pretty much disappear. And I start feeling how, as soon as he was getting to me, he was slowing down. And I was like, damn it, obviously his teammate was on the lead. So I was not getting any help from behind. But behind the 2 car, it was the 47, and he was pushing the very hard on the 2 to try to get the runs, but he was slowing down. So at that point, I knew that I was not going to create the run because I was not getting help from behind. So I knew that the run was going to have to come from the bottom if I wanted to make a move. So what I started doing is to trying to time the side draft on the A car, on Kyle's car, to slow him down enough for him to get a push from the 23, and then create a run on the 12, and then me somehow be able to get the advantage of that run that he was gonna get. And honestly, it worked out perfect because he got that run. He was able to get a run on the 12, get to the quarter panel of the 12, and then I was still in the quarter panel of the 8, and that's what created the 3 wide. So it just ended up working out great for us, obviously. Once we were on exit 4, I mean, at that point, you already put your cars down, and you are just hoping for the best. And at that point, really, anyone can win. It was so close that, Kyle could have won or Ryan could have won. And at that point, it just matter of timing. And, luckily, it ended up working out good for us.
0.003 of a second from Suarez to Blaney. Kyle Busch, 7 thousandths. Top 3 cars finished within 7 thousandths of a second.
Right. So it was fascinating. Congratulations to Suarez. He comes off a 13th place finish in the Daytona 500 yesterday. Brad, can they find this magic again, or was that just what that was at Atlanta?
No, they can. And here's why. The last 3 Atlanta races for Daniel Suarez, runner-up, win, and a runner-up. He's got 4 top 10 finishes there in the next-gen car on the new Atlanta Motor Speedway. His record speaks for itself. And this wasn't just a one-off win for him at Atlanta. This was something that they had been building to, and this was something that they backed up when we went back to Atlanta for the first playoffs race of 2024.
Brad, you'll be down there calling the action. Where is this track now in the lineup of places that always satisfy?
I would say it's right up there. I'm a big fan of speedway racing, and whether you consider this a speedway track or a hybrid, you're going to hear many different opinions. I feel that this is a speedway race, and while Daytona is different than Talladega, Atlanta is different from Daytona and Talladega as well, but I think you still get some of the great action. What I really loved about watching this race last year is you can hear Daniel Suarez, and I'm sure when Kent Bernhardt gets our feature produced for Sunday's race, you're going to hear Kyle Busch's description, you're going to hear Ryan Blaney's description of what was happening in that last lap. What I loved about it, we talk about the big crash at the end of the Daytona 500. What I loved is how Atlanta was really setting itself up and did set itself up for that great three-wide finish where drivers were like, look, I have options that don't involve me having to put my bumper on someone or something else, and it just made a great race. So for me, Atlanta is easily one of the top 3 tracks in my book as far as what you were going to get for action, and definitely one of the top tracks in my book of you have to be there to see it in person.
So PRN will have the action from Atlanta Motor Speedway. And Brad, I did want to talk about one other new thing that people are going to notice this year when they listen to the NASCAR truck races. They are, I don't know how to describe them, intersectional. They are neither PRN nor MRN.
The NASCAR Truck Series Radio Network, and it's great. It was really cool to hear Mike Bagley and Alex Hayden in the booth on Friday night for the truck race at Daytona with what we are now calling it the NASCAR Truck Network. For us on the Performance Racing Network, for now myself and Mark Garrow up in the booth, we'll be calling it the same thing. Trucks are not something that we've done on PRN because the Motor Racing Network had covered all of those, but, in the interest of great efficiencies and being able to put out some great products and everything, it's so wonderful to be able to work with them and come up with this whole concept of the way Truck Series races are going to be broadcast. And while it's going to be a long day on Saturday with qualifying, a truck race, and an Xfinity race, I can't wait for it. I think it's going to be incredibly rewarding, not just for us, but most importantly to the people tuning in.
Glad to see this come to fruition because for so long, the Motor Racing Network would have to send a crew to a racetrack where PRN was doing the Cup and Xfinity race just to do the truck race. That's a lot of expense. It's a lot of trouble. And now most of the primary announcers on those events at the Speedway Motorsports tracks will be PRN folks, but it's going to be under the caption of this new network. Is that right, Brad?
Yeah, that's exactly what it's going to be. So, it's going to be a lot of fun. We have 9 of the races on the NASCAR Truck Series Network this year. MRN has the balance of that schedule, which is about probably maybe a 60-40 split or so, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's so great to be able to partner with them and be able to do this and be able to deliver NASCAR through people's radios across the country and beyond.
Coming up next, we got a little green flag, black flag.
Imagine the roar of the engines, the smell of burnt rubber, the electrifying energy of the crowd. It feels like America. It's the Food City 500 NASCAR Weekend, April 11th through the 13th. It's racing the way it ought to be. This year, it's a triple-header weekend with the thrill of trucks, Xfinity, and Cup racing packed into 3 heart-pounding days. Visit BristolMotorspeedway.com for tickets and details.
Hey folks, it's Doug Rice. Did you know you can take PRN with you anywhere? By downloading the PRN mobile app, you can listen to our live races just about any place on the planet, and you will not miss a second of the action. Plus, you can hear our shows like the fantastic editions of Fast Talk, plus Brett McMillan on the Pit Reporters and Mark Garrow with Garage Pass. Get all the latest racing information right at your fingertips. The PRN mobile app, available at the Apple App Store and on Google Play.
I'm Chase Elliott, and you're listening to Fast Talk on the Performance Racing Network.
We saw a lot of chaos in the closing laps of the race, so just trying to minimize that, make it more about a race than people just using each other up.
I think it's needed. It was needed at all the road courses.
While I don't think it's going to be a home run, I think that it'll be in the right direction.
So many opportunities to either be really good or make mistakes, and they can start adding up on you quick.
For the latest NASCAR news without a restrictor plate, it's PRN's Garage Pass. For the station near you, check us out at goprn.com.
Hi, this is PRN's David Stiles. Join me each week when I head over to JC's Garage to talk NASCAR.
As of right now, if I were to name my top 5, I could tell you Chase Elliott wouldn't be in that top 5 with this next-gen car. He has a lot to prove on the road courses with this next-gen car, but I still don't think there's a real out-front leader. I think Tyler Reddick has been outstanding.
That's JC's Garage, wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
All right, we've plowed through a lot of the show, covered a lot of ground and stories from the Daytona 500. Time now for this lovely feature.
It's time for another edition of Green Flag, Black Flag.
Alrighty, I have carefully prepared statements that I will read aloud. And Doug Rice and Brad Gillie will mull them over, give it a little thought, and give it either a green flag or a black flag. Or what do we got here? Maybe agreement? There we go. All right, here we go. We'll start with Brad Gillie on this one. We will not really know who the real players of the season are until we leave Las Vegas in a few weeks. Brad?
Green flag. Look, the season starts with what I'm going to call 3 wild cards: Daytona, Atlanta Motor Speedway, and Circuit of the Americas. Let's add a 4th wild card in Phoenix Raceway, where they're going to have an option tire, which is something different. Vegas is like the first standard race that we're going to see this year, so I would agree with that statement.
Doug, is it Vegas that starts to tell the story?
I agree with that, but with a caveat that I really don't know that you know who's got what until we get done with the Coke 600 in May at Charlotte.
All right. So is that a green flag or a black flag?
That's a green flag.
Green flag. Okay. All right. Elio Castroneves, Doug, will never make it back to a Daytona 500.
I don't blame him. No, I think his passport to Florida has probably been revoked. Every time I looked up, Elio was in some kind of crash, either in the duels race or the ARCA race, where I think he had 5 wrecks, or the Daytona 500. But props, the guy never lost his smile, and he finished 5th in the ARCA race.
Friendly guy. Yeah. How about it, Brad?
Yep, black flag. Only because I want to see Elio Castroneves back in the Daytona 500. I feel that he needs another shot. And that 5th wreck in the ARCA race, that even happened after the checkered flag when someone, I think, didn't even know the race was over. So I'll give Elio a pass on that one.
All right. Brad, you're up first on this one. A 3rd-place finish at Daytona was the boost that Jimmy Johnson needed to set himself up for another top 5 run at this year's Coca-Cola 600.
Oh, green flag all the way. I mean, Jimmy Johnson may be a top contender for this year's Coca-Cola 600. I'm sure Doug won't agree.
Doug will not agree. No. One of these is not like the other, but props to Jimmy Johnson for his 3rd-place run at Daytona.
Very good. Okay, and Doug Rice, Ross Chastain should be in a lot more TV commercials.
I love the TV commercial for Busch Light where he talks about what's wrong with going around in circles. What Ross needs right now is a good day at the racetrack. You can have one in Daytona.
All right, Brad?
Green flag. And I actually talked with Ross about this last Wednesday during Media Day. And he was telling all about the filming of that commercial. They went up to Canada and went out in the woods. I mean, that's like legit real set. And he said there were so many different scenarios. He's sitting down eating beans at a campfire, doing this, doing that. The one they've gone with or went with so far was the one where he pops out of the tent on top of his car. But, man, I'm green flag all the way. I want to see every version of the commercial they filmed.
There must be a place you can go to do that. Maybe someplace like YouTube or something.
I bet.
I'll bet. Doug Rice is back to you.
I loved it. I thought it was a great spot, and all about Ross Chastain getting more TV time. We got to take our final break, and when we come back, time for one last thing.
Whether your engine runs daily or only when you need it, Z-Max Micro Lubricant is the force you need against carbon buildup that can damage your engine. Combustion causes carbon and other harmful deposits to build up in your engine, fuel system, and transmission. And carbon is like sandpaper rubbing against your engine's internal parts. You don't want that. You want Z-Max Micro Lubricant. It soaks into metal and keeps your vehicle running at peak performance. Find out more at zmax.com or visit us on Facebook and Twitter. Protect your engine to the max with Z-Max.
The speed, the thrill, the action. NASCAR takes over Las Vegas March 14th through 16th for the Pennzoil 400 race weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Get ready for non-stop action as NASCAR's biggest stars battle for victory. Whether you're in the stands or camping trackside, feel the adrenaline like never before. Tickets at lvms.com or call 800-644-4444. Are you ready to go all in? This is NASCAR. This is Vegas. This is the Pennzoil 400 March 14th through 16th.
I'm Eric Jones, and you're listening to Fast Talk on the Performance Racing Network.
Start your engine! Reddick goes right to the bottom of the racetrack. Chastain tries to hold on the outside.
Truex on the inside, Byron in the middle, Chastain up high.
Hamlin now beginning to come to the front. He's got the edge now. He'll take the lead away.
Ryan Blaney sliding down into the grass. There was a lot of bumping and grinding, and Blaney noses into the infield retaining wall.
Ross Chastain doing a great job. Truex right there, big in his mirror as they race down the backstretch here. Harrison Burton is spinning down the back straightaway. Everybody going to the top side. Here comes Kyle Larson. Larson dives to the bottom of the racetrack. He wants to lead all four.
Chris Buescher has the advantage and a spin off of turn 4.
Yeah, we've got a ton of cars that are in this one, and Larson is certainly one of those cars.
Trouble coming out of turn 4. Hamlin is sideways. The car spins down on the apron of the racetrack.
Byron takes that brightly painted number 24 to the front. He gets a big shove from Daniel Suarez.
This is PRN.
It's always a treat to break down the Daytona 500. Daytona 500 now, Speed Week, is almost like a season unto itself. The teams pour so much energy and effort into getting ready for that race because to win it can change your course of life. For William Byron, I don't think it's a life-changing event because he had already won this race, but it reinforces that William Byron is going to be one of the stars of this sport going forward. Brad Gillie, it is time for this.
One last thing.
You know, I know we can kind of go anywhere when we talk about one last thing, Doug, but it's so hard for me to not stick to our sport and the sport we love. And my one last thing is something that we actually talked about a little bit during Green Flag, Black Flag, and that is the unpredictability of our sport. And the way the schedule lays out this year, there is so much of it. We head to Atlanta Motor Speedway this weekend. A lot of unpredictability there. Last year, Circuit of the Americas, which is now the third race on the schedule, that was another William Byron win with Christopher Bell chasing him down and a poor pit stop from Bell's team that might have kept him out of victory lane. And the unpredictability is literally going to go throughout the season, whether we're going to Mexico City in the summer and some of the other great racing that we have, starting off at Atlanta Motor Speedway when we go back there in the summer with the bracket challenge, to having Talladega as the third to the last race of the year. This is great, and this is why you need to tune in. And more importantly, this is always my plea. Nothing can ever replace the at-track experience. Go to a race this year. You're going to have a great time, I promise.
Brad, quickly, Circuit of the Americas will be a little bit different layout this year when you get back there.
There you go. Another one. A shorter course at Circuit of the Americas. Not quite the same short course that they had when the supercars ran there a few years ago, but it is a shorter course, and I think this is going to be great. More laps, more times that the cars are going to go in front of the fans, and in talking to drivers about it, this shorter course is probably going to keep them a lot tighter together. That always means action on the track. I can't wait for it.
Well, let's hope that's the case. By the way, 3 out of the next 4 races on the NASCAR Cup Series are covered by the Performance Racing Network. As Brad alluded to when we talked about, they'll be down at Atlanta Motor Speedway. That's always a thrill show now that they've reconfigured that racetrack. Then the Circuit of the Americas will try out that new truncated course that they're going to race there. Then it'll be off to Phoenix. Motor Racing Network will have that. And then back to Las Vegas for the Pennzoil 400. PRN will have all the coverage there. Of course, there'll be some changes this year. Mark Garrow joins Brad Gillie up in the booth, and probably some other fresh voices. Some of them you'll be getting used to. Others will be familiar voices in different places. But, Brad, it's an exciting time, and I feel like now that Daytona is done, we're actually at the start of the real 2025 season.
I would agree with you. Look, I'm a routine person, and as I said before, I'd be happy if we did this 52 weeks out of the year, but it's happy to get back into the routine. Between now and November, there is not an off weekend for NASCAR at all, and I think that's awesome.
The Cup has one weekend off, that is Easter weekend, but the NASCAR Xfinity and Truck Series will be racing down at Rockingham. For David Stiles, Kent Bernhardt, Brad Gillie, I'm Doug Rice. Thanks a lot. We'll be back next week with a whole bunch more Fast Talk.
Fast Talk was presented by Sunoco. From NASCAR to your car, Sunoco Fuel helps your car reach peak performance. This is PRN, the Performance Racing Network.